become complacent. Protect children now. You can make a report to the police or call the CPA hotline on 227-0979.
A message from the Child Care and Protection Agency, Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, and UNICEF.
Kaieteur Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Good day. Welcome to your news at noon on Kaieteur Radio. I'm Kevin Smith. Judge Rishi Prasad has put on hold the suspension order issued against ESSO to cease operations until the hearing determination of the full appeal case. In the interim, the judge also ordered that the oil company provide a $2 billion parent company guarantee within the next 10 days, or the stay of the cease order will be lifted and the company's permit to conduct drilling activities within Guyana's lucrative Stabroek Block will be suspended. The appeal case is premised on an application filed in the High Court on September 13th by attorneys Sina Jairam, Melinda Janki, and Abiola Innes. In the case, Guyanese activists Godfrey White and Frederick Collins said that their resort to the court is to make sure that the company takes full financial responsibility in case of harm, loss, and damage to the environment. And ExxonMobil, through its subsidiary ESSO, and along with its partners in the Stabroek Block, recovered $347 billion for depreciation and the amortization of assets from 2021 to 2022. In the same period, Guyana made just approximately $347 billion in royalties and profits. For a breakdown of the costs recovered by Exxon and its partners, we reviewed the financial statements for the companies, which form part of court documents recently filed by ESSO. ESSO recovered $132.7 billion and $38.8 billion in depreciation and amortization costs for 2022 and 2021 respectively, bringing the total to $171.5 billion in 2 years. Its total assets are valued at $2.3 trillion. This amount includes intangible assets, wells and facilities, liza production assets, other assets including motor vehicles, office equipment, non-residential building, and IT equipment. And 2 sisters lost their lives tragically on Wednesday afternoon after their Belmont, Mahaica, East Coast Demerara home went up in flames. The 2 children have been identified as 3-year-old Shamina Hardat and 9-year-old Anamika Hardat. Information revealed that the fire started just around 13 hours yesterday and quickly gutted the 2-story building, which at the time had only the 2 girls inside. After hearing screams, residents from the area rushed to the scene to help extinguish the blaze, but could not reach the children in time as the fire quickly spread through the building. And having been completely destroyed by a fire back in January, the government will now be rebuilding the Christchurch Secondary School to the tune of $688.1 million. On Wednesday, the Ministry of Education signed 7 contracts at its Brickdam office for the reconstruction of the school. The new structure, according to the ministry, will be built at the same location and is expected to be finished in 7 months as per the contract. In other news, in the wake of the devastating fire at Madia that killed 20 children and caused injuries to several others, the Guyana Fire Service said it has embarked on a comprehensive inspection campaign targeting schools, dormitories, and hostels countrywide. Public Relations Officer of the Guyana Fire Service, Cylene Griffith, told the Department of Public Information Wednesday that the dorms and hostels are also equipped with the necessary fire safety equipment. However, this was not the case at the Mahdia school dormitory, where it was found that there were no fire extinguishers and the facility was heavily grilled. And in other news, the Hydrometeorological Service of the Ministry of Agriculture is forecasting that below normal amounts of rainfall are expected across Guyana from July 2023. Typically, continuous wetness, often accompanied by localized flooding, persists to the end of July in many regions. However, these conditions in general are not expected to persist beyond the end of June. The country is expected to begin transitioning into dry conditions by mid-July due to the influence of El Niño, the Hydromet Service said in a press release. According to the Hydromet Service, at this stage, it is expected that El Niño will be the main driver of local weather for the remainder of the year. Water supply in conservancies, reservoirs, and inland rivers across all regions are expected to remain adequate until the end of June and decrease thereafter. Additionally, the potential for flash floods due to heavy rainfall remains high for June, with the highest amounts of rainfall expected in Region 7 and Northern 8. And now let's tell you, 18 contracts totaling over $1.3 billion were signed on Tuesday for the road works in the Lamaha Yarrowcabra and Hararuni Yarrowcabra Neighborhood Democratic Councils on the Sussex-Linden Highway. The contract signing was spearheaded by Minister within the Ministry of Public Works, Deodat Indar, and a Minister within the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for public affairs, Kwame McCoy. And moving on, the body of Terry LaCruz, who went missing on Sunday after his boat had crashed into his father's boat along the Aruca River, Region 1, was found on Tuesday night. A relative of LaCruz related that around 19 hours on Tuesday, Terry's boat was found drifting up the Aruca River some distance away from where the accident occurred. We had reported that according to LaCruz's father, Percy Thomas, the accident occurred just around 21 hours 20 on Sunday while he was heading home with his family from church. And moments after he was found guilty on 2 counts of raping a child under the age of 16, Weslin Basil, called Tappy, attempted to take his own life. Basil had denied the charges, which stated that between January 1st and 31st, he engaged in sexual activity with a child under the age of 16. However, on Wednesday, after hours of deliberating, the 12-member jury returned with a guilty verdict on both charges. After he was found guilty, Basil attempted suicide, but this was prevented due to the actions of the court-martials. And that brings us to the end of today's News at Noon, but just before we go, we'll close things off by turning the pages of today's Kaieteur newspaper to page 7. Borrowing 6 times more. Despite several warnings from the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the IDB, the Guyana government continues to borrow big to fund its many projects. We reported on Wednesday that the Air Finale administration is on course to borrow 6 times the amount it took in 2022 to fund projects in its national budget. This information is clearly outlined in this year's budget documents. Volume 1 of the estimates indicate that the latest loan estimates in 2022 was $14.9 million. This year, government plans to borrow a whopping $94 million. This amounts to an increase of $79.1 million. And while all of this is happening, our Vice President continues to dream that one day we will achieve first world status by borrowing more and prudent management of our oil resources.
Want value for your advertising dollar?
Then place your ads on Kaieteur Radio's newscasts. Streamed live on 6 different mediums, reaching hundreds of thousands. Advertise today and watch your dollar grow. Call us on 225-8465 or 226-8210 today.
This is GHK Lal inviting you to join me weekdays from Monday to Friday on the National Outlook for commentary on a range of issues. Immediately after the 12 noon and 7 p.m. newscasts on Kaieteur Radio at 99.1 FM and 99.5 FM. Looking forward to you sharing in the conversation. It is Thursday, June 8th. Welcome to Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. I'm GHK Lal on the National Outlook. A prisoner, a mass murderer, escaped from the maximum security Mazaruni prison. His name was Mark Williams, better known as Smalley. He was also living under the shadow of eight death sentences for murders committed in Bartica. And then he was also found guilty of another murder, that of a Ghana Defense Force officer. This man has been found guilty by our courts. He was in a maximum security prison, the one with the most security in this country. And yet he escaped from there. Well, we understand there was some elements of an inside job with his escape that contributed to his escape. So that explains part of the mystery. Now, an accomplice was shot and killed whilst escaping because he was not handcuffed from the police. That one was a strange one. But I want to talk about Mr. Williams, the deceased Williams, a little bit more. The fact that he's dead, I think that many in Guyana are not crying, are not shedding any tears besides his family. I mean, the man was a mass murderer. My church and me, my church don't believe in the death penalty. I'm still up and down with it. My thing is that if we're going to have the death penalty on the books and the law, then we need to move forward with it after appeals and due process. We don't need to have prisoners hanging around for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it's either we have it on the books or we don't. And we just resort to life imprisonment. The other thing is that when Mr. Williams, aka Smalley, was killed in a joint forces operation, a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief, and I think justifiably so, because the parallels, I drew it, I think last week or in the papers when I wrote, that we remember the 2002 mass jailbreak and how it wreaked havoc and mayhem across this country with many dead and injured and lots of loss of other things, loss of life, loss of property. Who counts property in such situations? So people were saying, well, are we going to have another season of killing, another season of terror and fear? Well, he's gone now, an accomplice is gone, and perhaps Guyanese can rest easy. But I would also hope that we get a clean report, a convincing report on what happened, not only with Mr. Williams, who's now dead, but his accomplice. It will give us some additional peace of mind that things were done right. I'm GHK Lal on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Thank you for listening to the National Outlook.
Kaieteur Radio.
Covering Guyana from coast to coast.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
managing the oil crumbs we getting well, and borrow a set of money to spend wisely, according to Jagdeo, will make Guyana into a first world country.
So it is